He gives me electronics he doesn't know. Okay. Anyway, this popped into my head. Well, my mother got to fretting during church that Moody didn't have any cigarettes. So we drove the 13 miles to the courthouse, and there was this trellis vine that went up to the 3rd floor. And I remember my mother in those stiletto heels climbing this trellisy thing. And here was my dad looking down like Rapunzel, and she was chucking those cigarettes at him. I don't know, I was maybe 5 or 6, I don't know. But that just stuck in my mind. I don't know why. But, that was kind of just the normal chaos that went on in my life. And like I said, my mother and father could not live together. They could not live without each other. I've done inventories on that, trying to figure out, when was peaceful times in my life and what was different and all this kind of thing. And before my mother passed, I said, I remember this time being really peaceful in my life. She says, we weren't living together. And that's pretty much what it was. My father was also a diabetic, and he would frequently come home just about half dead from a bender. And I need to tell you that we went to church frequently, lots of times, and I heard in church, and I don't know if it was taught or if it's the broken procedures in my head, because I don't hear things right. I hear them the way I hear them, and that's not sometimes reality. Anyway, I heard that if you were good, God would give you good things, and if you were bad, God would give you bad things, and if you thought of sin, you were just as guilty as if you did the sin. And I remember this one particular time, somebody brought my dad home, and he was really, really sick. My mother sent me across to the neighbors. And, on the way over there, I had that thought, I wish he'd die. Just a little kid, 7, 8 years old. And that was the minute. I can chase that back to the minute that I stopped talking to God out of fear. Because I committed that sin. And that's pretty much the kind of relationship I had with God until I got in these rooms. I wasn't going to be a multiple marrier like my mother. My mother was a multiple marrier. I have an older brother, which is my half brother, and she was married to him, and then she was married to my dad. And as soon as my mom and dad didn't live together anymore, she married another alcoholic, and I was 13 years old, 14, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there, and mean, nasty, chip on my shoulder, hateful little thing. And she married him, and I didn't get along with that stepfather because he wanted to be a father to me, and I was too old to have a father. So I was very mean. I don't know how else to describe it. I was just mean. I was an unhappy teenager. I don't know about y'all, but I have relationship issues. I can't have a healthy relationship with the opposite sex. But when I did have a relationship with somebody else, then I felt a little bit better. I had a man. I call it a man's household for a better way of putting it. But so I was always seeking a him to make me feel right, and I started that journey pretty early in my life, and get that down. Anyway, when I was about 17 years old, I could not get along with that stepfather, and so I decided to move out on my own, and I did. I'll show you, I'll punish you. You don't treat me the way I think I need to be treated. You don't have to have freedoms that I want to have. And I never was a bad kid. I was just a kind of a wild child. Freedom. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. We were just free. That was just the way we were. So anyway, I moved out when I was 17, and I don't know about y'all, but I'm going to do this and this and this. I've never made lists, but I make mental lists. This is going to happen, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. So when I was 17, moved out. I was too young to get into the program that I wanted to get into, and I enrolled, and I became a nurse and went to school. It was only school that would take me because I was too young. and I turned 18. You know, you can be licensed by the state of Texas when you're 18, 19 years old, and as an LVN. And so I completed that school and did well. I don't know how, because got to back up a little bit. I started partying about that time too. And I wish Loretta was here, because she used to go help me out with that. You know, we lived in a small town and we didn't always have a lot of money. And she was always good for sneaking into her grandpa's house and getting us a six-pack. It was always in that refrigerator. And I remember her particularly one time when I got really bad drunk, taking care of me, holding my head all night while I threw up. Because I don't know about y'all, I'm an Al-Anon that knows about Kohler and American Standard. Any of y'all know that? I know a lot about that. And I always have thought about that story in the big book where the guy's talking about, you know, he wants to be successful and everything like that. He puts the plug in the jug until he retires, and then in 6 months he's dead or something like that. I always related to that, but I was always able to put a plug in the jug. And it doesn't matter to me today if I belong on the other side or on the Al-Anon side. I know I lived most of my life on the Al-Anon side. I've always wanted to control people. I've always wanted to fix people. I need to back up a little bit. Not only did I deal with alcoholism in my early childhood, I also dealt with my mother's mental illness. And I don't know which I wanted to cover up in the sandbox box most. I really don't. And I would try to hide both. You know, I was always a hider. You know, and I asked her before she died, I said, who taught me not to tell? Because I didn't tell anything. I didn't air my dirty laundry. I kept it all inside. And, you know, alcoholism teaches you not to tell, not to trust, and not to feel, you know, when you're affected by it. And I tried to control her mental illness. I tried to control my father. I remember crawling up in his lap when I was about probably 8 years old, and I was like I said, I was a very religious little child, and I took that Bible and I said, read this Bible, maybe it'll help you with your drinking. It didn't. He succumbed to this disease when I was 16, and we just found him dead the day after Christmas. And you know, I hated that man. I thought I hated him. You know, turned out I didn't. I loved him. You know, it was just clouded by the alcoholism. Anyway, got through nursing school. I'm digressing and I'm going all over the place, but you know, God made me, so that's the way my brain works. So just bear with me. I was not going to be my mom. I was not going to marry one time, one and done. And I'd had my heart broken when I was in high school, 16, 17, 18, something like that. And I was never going to love nobody again because that hurt too damn bad. Excuse me. So anyway, this young man happened in my life, and he asked me to marry him, and I said, okay, we can get married, because that's what my girlfriends were doing. I mean, I wanted to hang out with the rest of them. And I said, but you need to know I don't love you. I was always honest. So we married, and it turned out to be a really crazy relationship. He was an adult child of an alcoholic. And, you know, I did inventories. I was always just like Judy. Got to be a bad boy. Those normal guys just didn't do it for me. Anyway, we rocked and rolled for about 5 years. I divorced him twice. That's an interesting story. Married him once, but divorced him twice. I mean, we reconciled like the day before the divorce decree was final. And we lived together 5 years, and it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. You know, we brought alcoholism into that marriage because we were both controllers, we were both possessive, we were both jealous. You know, it was crazy. It was the most miserable, one of the most miserable times in my life. You know, I told you I was one and done, you know, one and done. And I thought I could go out and be one of those little wild children, but, you know, I don't know about you, I've never been able to change my moral fiber that much. And, you know, I was just going to love them and leave them. That didn't work for me. And I still had that hole that hurt so bad. Didn't know what to do with it. And I was still looking for the magic potion that filled it. And I was still looking at relationship. If I just met the right human, just the right one. Well, there was this cute guy come around. He's the alcoholic that got me here, the one that I'm fixing to tell you about. This one right here that I've been married to for 20 years, he's not the one that got me here. He's the one that keeps me here. You should have been in the parking lot this morning. It was funny. She got a hoot out of it. Anyway, I divorced him, and that whole hurt him, and I was lonely. I was always lonely, and I couldn't stand to be by myself. I did a lot of time at the Red Raider too. I danced all the time. Loved it. It's crazy. I didn't know I could dance if I didn't drink. Y'all taught me that. I can dance when I don't drink. It's amazing. Anyway, this guy happened into my life, and it was magic, and what it is. And we dated off and on for about 18 months before we married, and every time that we would date and start getting a little bit crazy, I'd say, this is getting a little bit crazy. And I'd say, we just need to cool it, and he'd go off and he'd come back, but every time he would ask me that magic question, will you marry me? And he came back into my life in December and asked me to marry him, and I said, okay, August sounds good. We'll get married in August. Alcoholic and Alabama. We were married on January the 9th. Yeah. So anyway, he was a binger, and I did not recognize it. And I don't know if he crossed the line. The isms were there, but not the active participation in the drinking and the drugging, because drinking and drugging were both things that he did. But he was one of those people that would be straight for like 2 months, and then he'd just be gone. He'd vanish. You couldn't find him. I always said he could slip through the house through the keyhole with me watching. Anyway, we were married for, I think we were together a total of 17 years. I take my hostages seriously. I don't know if y'all know this, but in an alcoholic alcoholic relationship, somebody took somebody hostage. And it's iffy who did it. Anyway, we were okay for a little while, and then, he would disappear, and I'd get all crazy, and, be waiting up for a fight when he would finally show back up, and I thought, I bet we'll fix this. And so I did talk to him about that. Most of the time I made those kind of major decisions on my own and just made you align to what my will was. So anyway, we conceived and had this little boy, and I was 29 years old when I had him. I need to say that, in that first marriage, I conceived and lost 4 babies, and I always thought God was punishing me there for something, maybe for those thoughts that I had, I don't know. I got here with a very punishing God. Anyway, we had this little boy, and I thought that would fix it, and it didn't fix it, and I thought, have the baby. How about, he made really good money. And I thought, let's start getting those things I always wanted that I thought would make me happy. So we got the nice brick home, we got the 2 new cars, he had a Harley, we had a boat, we had a camper, and all those things would make me temporarily okay. And then that stuff would start churning in my gut again, and I wouldn't be happy for long. I was missing a relationship with God. I didn't know. We walked on and off for a long time. He lost that job in the oil field when my son was about 3, and we managed to hang on to those things until he was about 5. And during that time, he crossed the line definitely. He was drinking and drugging just pretty regularly, and he would go off and find a job, and he would always beg me to follow him. One time he was in Albuquerque, and I had a little job I was hanging on to, and I'd just go visit him, and we just kind of lived. We were not separated by any means, but we just lived apart because of that. And he was supposed to be sending money home to me, but that never happened. And and I was just making ends meet, and then he got a job in Jal, New Mexico. I went over there and looked at that place, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity to drink. There really wasn't. There's one water in the hole. And I'd always gauged my relationship, when was a good time to get out of a relationship, and if it ever mirrored what my mother and father did to each other, then it was time to go. So anyway, I was over there about, like, my child was in kindergarten, checked him out of his first little kindergarten during Christmas break. We moved to Jal, New Mexico, enrolled him in school there, and he went out for that proverbial pack of cigarettes, and he didn't come home, and his name, angry, raging. And I went up there to that only watering hole, and I proceeded to make a big old scene, and dumped a beer on him, and all this stuff, just a crazy ironic moment. And he followed me home, and he hit me for the first time. And I knew this man pretty well, and it was something that really, really was not in his makeup. But alcoholism took him to that. I left him for 10 months. This was pretty comical. I left that night after he passed out, and we were not in good financial shape. I had this old beat-up diesel station wagon. I got my cat, my kid. I hadn't unpacked this diesel station wagon. I had this oak antique icebox in the back end of it, and I headed for parts unknown. We stayed in this flea bag motel the rest of that night, and got up the next morning, and I didn't know where I was going to go. I had no money, and I had $200 to myself, no job, because I quit my job. And so I had that child enrolled in that kindergarten, took him out of there, ended up at my mother's, and my mother was not in a place that was good for her to have somebody else in her home. But I was paralyzed. It was a bottom. It was a bottom for me. And I was thinking about this last night. How could he let me go? Somebody as wonderful and sweet as me. I ended up there, and I don't know, I was just so depressed and so despondent, and I couldn't even hardly get up and get that kid to school, and I had him enrolled in the 3rd kindergarten. And it's just January still. And then somehow or another I ended up in Lubbock, Texas. I was never going to raise a kid in Lubbock, Texas. That was a line in the sand. And ended up here and still was paralyzed. Couldn't get out of bed. So despondent. I had left my drug. I had left my addiction because I had been hell-bent on fixing him for a long, long time. Anyway, ended up in Lubbock, Texas, and had that kid in that 4th kindergarten. At least it was February by then. Providing a stable home for that kid. Things were bad financially, and I'll always carry some guilt about this, but I went and picked him up from school in that station wagon. By then, I was rolling pennies to get gas to even go across town, and I went to go pick up a job application, a job that I'd seen. I didn't even have a phone, no phone, and had somebody to do my resume, and a friend of a friend, one of those deals, and presented that resume and went in there just to get an application. I got interviewed, but I'd left that 5-year-old kid in that car because I didn't have any other options. I had no resources. And I never will forget how awful I felt when I went back out to that car and that kid was scared to death. I'd been in there 45 minutes, something like that. But good news is I got that job. Between us and some, God never arrives until the minute that you need him, especially in things like that. Anyway, I got that job, and it wasn't long before that alcoholic and I were, perfect alcoholic relationship. Couldn't live with each other, couldn't live without. And we separated about 10 months, and we went back together, and I got a little exposure to, I got that like term later, but Dr. Phil always talks about relationship amnesia. And I had been suffering from relationship amnesia with him because I forgot how bad it was in that 10 months. How crazy we had gotten together. Anyway, we lived together about 3 more years, and his alcoholism progressed. And I remember one time I was drawing this lady's blood, and she was a member of Al-Anon, and she came in, and I could tell she was in a funk. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Well, I have an alcoholic on my couch." I said, "Me too." Me too. And but she did me one of the greatest. She did one of the best things that she ever did. She gave me a schedule of Al-Anon. I don't know when I knew about Al-Anon. I mean, my dad was in drying out institutes from the time I can remember, at least 1964, because I remember picking him up, no, 1960, picking him up for a funeral to go to out of the VA hospital or the state hospital one. I don't know. It was just frequent visitors down there. And I think I was introduced to the 12-step program then. You know, and there was always this plaque on my kitchen in the house that I was raised in of the Serenity Prayer. It's pretty much synonymous with us, but it was always on the wall. Anyway, he started getting in trouble about this time with DWIs and all this kind of thing, and we were not a happy family unit. You know, we were not. But he got that first DWI and he got dry. He got dry for about 6 months. It was awful. Awful. You know, and I was grateful when he drank again. It really was. He got another DWI in there somewhere, and I was still trying to control him. I finally quit trying to pay his bills, you know, because I would try to do that too. And, you know, he never went to pay his probation. He never went to pay his fines. I always did it because I'm the hero. I've always been the hero. Responsible for everything and everybody just so I could be okay. He called me. He would disappear for days then. You know, his alcoholism was progressing, and he would disappear for days. And I was just disconnected, divorced from him, you know, emotionally. And I got a call one day at work. And I've been telling him for a long time he needs some help. He's a bad alcoholic, you know, and a lot of other stuff. It wasn't just that nice. But anyway, he called me at work, and he said, well, I won't be home for a few days. And I said, well, what's new? You know, and then he said, I'm going to treatment. He'd gotten called on the carpet at work, and his boss had encouraged him to go to treatment. He had insurance, and so I know this was a God deal because, I mean, I hadn't had nothing to do with this guy for a long time, and the next words out of my mouth, God put there, he said, I said, do you need a ride? And I took him to treatment. I went to family group because I'm responsible. You know, I've got to go participate because I'm responsible. And I hear things on Saturdays in those family groups, and they showed us, I can't remember, Bradford professionals probably know it was a series of family schematics. And I recognized what damage it was doing to that kid. I loved that child. I loved that kid. And, you know, I said, I got to change this role. This is just going on and on and on generationally in my life. And I wasn't ready for Al-Anon yet. They highly encouraged me to go to Al-Anon, but who's going to take care of the kid? You know, I still didn't have a support system. So anyway, I went to those family groups, and that's when my dam broke. I don't know if any of you Al-Anons can understand the dam breaking, but I had stuffed everything from childhood on. If it had a feeling attached to it, I stuffed it, and mostly I stuffed my rage and my anger. And I need to back up a little bit because some of that was erupting. You can only keep that volcano packed for so long, and then it's going to bust. It's going to erupt. You're going to have an eruption. I was having frequent eruptions. I knew I was insane, and I think I'm a blessed Al-Anon because I know I'm insane. When I was in a United, and this young man didn't have any resemblance to anybody in my life, nothing. And he walked by me, but he didn't smell right. He just didn't smell right. And it took every fiber of my self-control not to punch his lights out. And I thought, oh God, I'm nut. I mean, that's how sick I was getting. I mean, I was so sick. He finished treatment, stayed sober 45 days. He relapsed, and I told you about that bottom I hit when I left him. I hit another bottom, and drove me right straight into these rooms. But my dam had started to get a crack in it, you know. It cracked. I plugged it up when he was in treatment, and it cracked again. And when it cracked again, Larry the Cable Guy, I get it done. I went to my first Al-Anon meeting, and I made an appointment with a counselor, and I started that deal. I went to Al-Anon on Wednesday nights, and I went to a counselor on Fridays during the day, and then I went to a second Al-Anon meeting on Friday nights, and I started that. And when I walked into these rooms, I didn't hear anything that y'all said. I just knew that y'all had something I wanted. Y'all had something I wanted. Y'all had some peace in you, and I've been looking for peace. I need to back up also that I've been reading all these self-help books for years. I still have a good library of self-help books. It wasn't fixing me, Codependent No More helped me a little bit. That's probably an antique now, isn't it? Dating myself. Anyway, I went to that counselor, and I went to those Al-Anon meetings, and I was too poor. I was basically a single mother with a grown kid and a little kid, and I couldn't afford it for a while. And I would come to these meetings, and I thought, $1 in a basket, as opposed to these fees that I really couldn't afford, and I was on a pay scale. And so I just had to drop that. I just started doing Al-Anon, and I was at every meeting I could possibly get to, and I listened, and I tried to do what y'all were doing around these rooms. And I heard, got to get a sponsor, got to work the steps, don't make a major decision if you can help it for a year, stay out of a relationship. Well, that didn't apply to me because I was married, but I heard it, and I stuck it away. And I got busy, and I got a sponsor, and started working the steps to the best of my ability. I did not have any trouble with step 1. I do today. More trouble today. I have to be more mindful of it. But when I walked in here, I told you nothing was different, but everything was different. And I surrendered at that moment of alcoholism. My problem is I can surrender, but I can't stay surrendered. I've got to keep coming in these rooms to stay surrendered. I'm willful to the max. But anyway, did step 1 pretty much when I first got in here. I didn't get the second part of step 1 for a long time, but at least I've come alive enough to know that, I was powerless over alcohol. I didn't get that my thinking was unmanageable. I didn't get there for a long time. I had no problem with admitting I was insane. I had a hard time with that God part, calling on a higher power to restore me to sanity. What is your will? When it comes to step 3, what is your will? And I didn't hear it. I didn't get to hear it for a long time. I remember in those early days reading that literature and that ODAT. Every day was written for me. Every single day. That's one of my other little God miracles. Every single day was what I needed. And I would do that religiously. Read that. And I've never been a warning person, so I would take that little book to the bathroom, like my break at work, and read my little book. And it doesn't matter where you meet God. It doesn't matter a bit. So I'd meet God in there, and He would give me those words, and they every day fit me. And then it come time to that 4th step. We don't know. I did a pretty good 1, 2, and 3 pretty quick, and I got on that pink cloud. Everything's pretty good, and I was around people that understood me, and I made friends at that time, running friends, and we started having fun in recovery. And I just kind of stalled out. It'd been a long time, and my sponsor then, my first sponsor, she said, a few months into it, she said, well, you haven't proceeded with the steps. Have you got a new sponsor? And I said, no. She said, well, start back over on the steps. So I was following directions. I heard that I had to be open-minded, I had to have open-mindedness, willingness, and honesty. And so I started back over the steps, and I did them again, and tried to do the 4th step the way she told me to do. And when I would get ready to do the steps, I would read everything I could possibly find in every piece of AA and Al-Anon and NA literature that I could get my hands on. And there's it's on the 4th step, and it talks about, you need not look this way because, obviously I wasn't that, I'm just an Al-Anon. I didn't do all this stuff. I was just the victim of it. And then my fear said, you better not look at this. You're going to break to 1,000,000 pieces and you're never going back to go. And that was my first experience with my 4-step, but I did it anyway. I wanted to get what y'all had. My self-centeredness wanted me to get what y'all had. And so I did my very best to do a 4-step. And it turned out to be it was just a biography, because that's the way my dots connected. I cried rivers when I did it. And if anybody in here that's a new Al-Anon, if you go to meetings and you cry a lot, they don't run you off. I cried for 2 solid years. Every day, every meeting, just about. Anyway, I got through that first 4-step and went on through the steps, and I did my best to complete them. I did that 9th step to the best of my ability, and except for one, and I wasn't ready, because there were people that did bad things to me. And why did I have to make amends to them? And I just had to pray for the willingness, but I hadn't got that yet. Did the very best I could with that. That marriage he finally quit coming home. I'd done step 3. I'd always gone and got him before, knowing deep down inside that I was not doing what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be letting go. Letting God do whatever he needs to do. So I didn't go get him, and he eventually found another her, and that was another big old Al-Anonic crisis for me. And but I got through it, and I did what it said: don't get in a relationship for a year, and I didn't. And finally give myself permission. I didn't ask God. I gave myself permission to it's okay, You can go out to dinner and the movie, no big a deal. And so I started giving myself permission to seek out some of this confession. When we're here, there's some cute little alcoholic guys around. Y'all know that. And I went to a conference. I went to the first conference and stayed one day, and then I went to a camp out in Campo, Colorado. And the next conference, I was participating in the whole Catholic conference, and I was there on a Friday. I don't remember why I was there early, but I was. But anyway, I was going down the hospitality line, and I was getting cookies, candy, everything fattening. And there was this little guy on the other side, and he was getting celery sticks, carrots. He's skinny, I'm fat. And I looked at him, and stupid stuff falls out of my mouth. I looked over at him and said, what's wrong with this picture? And we sat down and we visited, and we become fast friends. That's what we do in this deal. And we took it slow. Took it slow. We made friends on that day. It was several months later. He asked for my phone number, but he never called me. That was okay too, because I was just having fun. And he finally called me, and he said, let's go out and eat. And I said, okay. And so we went out and ate, and he came over to my house, made a pot of coffee, we talked. I got the AA hug at the door, and I said, okay, just wants to be friends. I'm fine with that. It's cool. The next day he calls me, and he says, I need to say something. I said, okay. And he said, I'm sorry I didn't kiss you last night. And, nerd came out again. I said, well, we'll get around to it. We did. We dated from October, and we became, that started the romance, and then the love came, and I wasn't going to marry again because I wasn't going to be a multiple marrier. Already 2 strikes. So anyway, we moved in together in May. Hardest thing I ever did in my life was to tell my mother I was going to live in sin.
Oh, dear.
Oh, it was hard. She took it pretty good. And then about a year later after that, we got married. And we've been married pretty close to 21 years. And that's been a journey for us, Thank you.
Yeah.
The thing that makes our marriage work is we're never crazy on the same day. Rarely are we crazy on the same day. I should be more truthful there. You know, we live in a recovery home. He stays out of my recovery, I stay out of his. And we get along well, and it's because we practice these principles in our home. We've been through stuff in recovery. You know, the first major thing that hit us was in January of 2003. I was diagnosed with bone cancer, and they sent me to Dallas to be treated because it couldn't be treated here, and he was right by my side. I never fully accepted that he loved me for free. You know, no one had ever loved me for free. And he'd sit there by my hospital bed and just be with me, you know, and I was pitiful. Oh, it was pitiful. I was pitiful for a long time. I need to also tell you that it's been a journey for me to find a loving God. It's been little bitty increments all along the way. And at that time, I got scared, and I ran from the God that I had been developing a relationship with, and I couldn't pray. And people prayed for me. It got me through it. And the first prayer I could say, it wasn't pretty either. I remember I just got off that potty in the bathroom. Most of my spiritual moments are in the bathroom. I just got off that potty in the bathroom, and I said, okay, God, whatever. And that was my first prayer I could utter, and I don't know how far out I was, but, you know, it was a hard time. You know, I had people visit me, come bring me a meeting and a meeting or two, and I was a workaholic before, and I'm planted on my butt in my house with only myself for company. That's not a good place for a sick person to be. Anyway, I don't know how Gary's ears didn't fall off, because I said, what's my purpose anymore? You know, just stuck here. You know, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, and, you know, and he'd try to tell me, you know, what is it, the third tradition? Or fifth tradition. You know, our purpose is to help others. And that's my purpose today. And I'm okay with it. Recovery has been a journey for us, and then after that, you know, we weathered that storm, and it was a pain in the butt. We went to Dallas, every 2 weeks, every month. We went to Dallas so many times. I had a skycap guy that he was running for me because he knew what the tip was going to be. We'd fly down there for the day. You know, we did that deal, and then he got sick, and I'm an Al-Anon that got jealous when I come in here and heard all y'all's stories, all the things that y'all did, you know, the plots and the stuff y'all were going to do to your alcoholics. And the only thing I ever laid in bed and fantasized about was keeping the life insurance money up and how I was going to spend it, because he was going to kill himself. I didn't have to. But y'all had plots. And you know you're sick when you think you're mad at yourself for not coming up for them. Anyway, he got sick, and I got to do an Al-Anon thing that was medically advised. I got to poison him once a week, and it was crazy. And then he got crazy at work, and they sent him home to me, give him a month's leave, because he was too crazy to work. And then it's really kind of funny. I have to tell this story. Can I tell the story?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
He, when he was taking this treatment, he had cluster headaches, and then they sent him to a neuropsychiatrist, you know, for the headaches, and it happened to be a psychiatrist. And then he got so depressed he couldn't function, and he was in there talking to the doctor and everything, and he wasn't telling the truth, you know, and that's my job. I said, he gets temporarily homicidal. And you should have been there when we walked out of the office. Don't you ever tell the psychiatrist I'm temporarily homicidal. They'll lock me up. They didn't. But anyway, that was another crazy time in our life, and we've walked through some stuff in the last few years, and it's just life on life's terms. Bad things happen in recovery. It's not all peaches and cream. But we have the tools, you know. I've learned how to live one day at a time. Y'all taught me. Y'all taught me how to live one day at a time, and I live it to a fault. That's okay. After that happened, I had to have additional surgery on my leg, and they straightened me out because I was 2 inches shorter for a long time. And they straightened me out, and he was complaining his leg was bothering him. And we got back, and I was maybe 2 weeks out from surgery, and he had to go to the doctor, and we were both in the hospital together. He was the patient, and this is funny. You know, I'm hobbling around on my walker, taking care of him. I'm not even supposed to get down on that cot because it's too low, you know, for hip precautions. And I get a phone call. I'm already laid out, asleep, and he's in that bed. And I get a phone call on my phone, and it's him from the bed. Y'all know where this is going? He wants me to get up and get his urine. He's still alive, y'all. I haven't killed him. You have to have a sense of humor about that. You know, at any time we can be prone to childlike behavior. Me being angry about it was just as childlike as him. We've had crazy moments in recovery, and that was kind of fun too. We could break together because neither one of us could drive. We were stuck out in the country. Yeah. We're lucky our house has a den in the front and the back, and it has a living room in the front. It's like two different houses. So and he was so irritable, I just go in the living room, and when I was irritable, we just left each other alone. But we survived that too. We have weathered other storms too. There's been a lot of death. I lost my mom first, and then his mother died suddenly, and we weathered that storm. And just prior to that, his dad had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he lived on his own for about a year, and then he moved in with us. And you know, that's what this program has taught us to do: is be responsible. You know, and where the need is, do the best you can. And it was a hard time. I ain't gonna lie. It was hard living with somebody that you had to listen to fall all the time and be up and down all night long, and it didn't help that his dad was oppositional, defiant, in my opinion. But we weathered that storm, and his dad passed in December, and my first sponsor passed in December. I lost a young man to alcoholism in December from our little group, and it's been a hard year. It's been a hard year, and then lost another old-timer that was special to us. But that's just life. That's just life. You know, you feel your grief and you go, oh, it's still kind of fresh, but that's okay. I've just about got you up to where it is. I go back to these steps. My sponsor lives in Waco, Texas, and we get together face-to-face twice a year, and we talk about recovery. You know, if there's a problem, we talk. And, you know, you learn a lot in the early years about recovery. You learn a lot in the latter years about living recovery. And I try to live recovery to the best of my ability. I try to be a good example of it. You know, I try to live it in the program and out of the program. I have to tell you one more funny story, and then I'm going to sit down. I had this lady that was kind of a mentor for me during my cancer stuff, and because, you know, you want to hear somebody survived, you know. And so I talked to this lady, and I said, I'll come to a cancer support group as soon as I'm able to get out on my own, because I couldn't drive. I couldn't leave the house for 8 months, and then Gary really freaked out when I learned how to handstand off that back porch, because it's about 3 foot tall, but I could do it. I'm not a homebody anyway. He said, you didn't just do that. And I said, yeah, and I wiggle that walker in the car, and off I'd go. Anyway, I went to that cancer support group, and I just was sitting there telling them how I got through, you know, how I was managing to live through the cancer stuff. And one of the chaplains come up to me afterwards and said, you're a friend of Bill's, aren't you? You know, that's what I want to be, is I want to be an example of these 12 steps. We're planted in Littlefield, Texas. Anybody's welcome to come over there. We have big book study on Monday night. We have open discussion on Wednesday night, and we have open discussion and birthday night or whatever on Saturday night. And I'm planted over there. You know, it was one of those things. Gary and I were sitting there looking at each other on a Saturday night when gas was $4 a gallon and we were poor. It's 15 minutes to Littleville, Texas. It's 45 minutes from where we live to a meeting, and probably less gas. So, and I've been ignoring that God nudge, and Gary'd been feeling it too, but we weren't talking about it. So we went over there and started going to that little meeting, and it's been a blessing. We meet together. We don't have enough Al-Anons to separate from the alcoholics, and there's usually 2 Al-Anon people in the meeting, and I just go in there and I talk about my Al-Anonism. I don't try to fit in with them. I share my program, and we have this one guy. He says it helps me. It helps me to hear the other side of it. He's got about 2 years sober, and he's gotten some really solid sobriety, and I'm happy. I wish everybody that came in these rooms and could sit all the way down like I was able to do. Thank God I was, because if I'd gone back out and not stayed in this program, I wouldn't be here today. And I know me. I know I would revert back to form, and I would become who I was, and I didn't like me, not one little bit. We were coming home the other night, and I got to thinking about it's not an amends I can ever possibly make, but it was something that I needed to do, because I got a hold of a woman that had stole from me. I don't know what all I did to her. I just know how vicious I was. And no human being used to be treated that way. And that's who I could become if I was robbed. And I don't want to be her anymore. I want to be as loving and kind as I can. I'm not going to be walked on, and I'm not going to be abused today. And if you want what I have, I'll be happy to share what was given to me, because I don't have anything else. Only what was given to me. And it was given to me freely, and I'll give it back to you freely. I'm not going to work harder at your recovery than you are. And that's where I've been for the last few years. And I used to try to work harder than you wanted to. And that's your business. I just know that I'm in a peaceful place most of the time. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, and y'all taught me. And I'm very grateful that you did. And that's all I got.
All right.